This is the JWN podcast. Madison White is the general manager at one of Charleston's newest restaurants, Tempest, which opened in August of 2020 during the pandemic and was named as the best new restaurant in the country by USA Today's readers. Now you may be asking yourself what a restaurant manager has to offer a podcast focused on creativity. Well, besides the fact that so many creatives have made ends meet by working in the food and beverage industry at some point in their career, Madison's life story is one that is fueled by creative endeavors, including opening a successful music school and studio with her husband right here in Charleston. From fashion to acting, writing, and even stand-up comedy, she's built upon her life experiences with a creative spirit in mind, and I'm excited to share this conversation with you. So let's get to know my guest, Madison White.
I did a podcast not too long ago, and we got like 5 minutes in, 6 minutes in, and she was like, I didn't hit record.
No!
Oh.
It's like
I bet
a
it just
nightmare.
threw me off. I'm like, where do I pick up? I already said so much stuff. And
Yeah, and
it was awkward.
all of the excitement and energy is gone.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I gotta redo this.
Exactly.
Am I telling the story the same way?
Exactly.
All right, so we are rolling. So we're recording. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
There's not much more I have to tell you. I've been getting to the point where I just hit record and people are like, are we recording this right now?
But I feel like that's the most genuine way. It's conversational. It's not like, oh, these are the questions I'm going to ask, and this is what you have to answer.
Well, especially with somebody you meet for the first time, because
Right.
then you start like making small talk, which leads into other topics, and you're like, well, this could be on the podcast. Maybe we should be recording this.
Right.
So, Madison, I don't know anything about you except for what I could find on the internet.
Which is probably not much.
But what I did find was extremely interesting. You come to us today. You're part of something extremely interesting to me. Well, a few things extremely interesting to me. The number one thing that's recent, I should say, not number one, but number one as far as like the most recent thing is you're part of a restaurant that opened up in 2020, which is crazy.
Yes.
And not just like, oh, we opened up in March and we had bad timing. No, you guys opened in like August.
August, yeah. And we were in the thick of it.
And so this is a place called Tempest. It's in Charleston.
Yep.
And they quickly got named one of the best restaurants to open.
Best new restaurant in the country.
Best new restaurant in the country
Yeah.
from like USA Today or something like that.
Mhm.
But what's interesting is like, I am so floored that people thought like, you know what, we're just going to go through with this.
I think there wasn't a choice. You're already that involved. I mean, we started 14 months before just on construction and build out and all of that stuff. So things got pushed. Our timeline got moved back a little bit, but eventually it just gets to a point where like, well, it's now or never, and we're going to do it. And honestly, the Charleston community was extremely supportive. I mean, people are on the side of restaurants right now. You know, they're kind of the underdog. So
it's definitely one of the things that through this whole pandemic, people have to eat.
Right.
I know personally, I've had up until recent, I'm starting to just kind of, I don't know how you feel about the whole pandemic, but I'm starting to get to the point where I'm just like, I'm overwhelmed by the anxiety and the despair of the thing. And then at the same time, like certain things have happened personally in my life where some of the problems that you fear for have kind of come and gone.
Right.
And so you're no longer as fearful, which is not a
Well, as
fair...
we get more information,
Right.
as more information came out, I think the very beginning when everybody didn't know much about this or, you know, it was the height of fear.
Yeah.
It's so interesting to me because I, moved here from LA and I have family in New York, and those are cities that have really tight restrictions still to this day. I talk to my friends out there and they are living a different life than I am.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm in this bubble. And to be honest, it's been such a crazy year for me that I've just been so busy. Not that I don't know it exists, but I almost didn't have time to, which is probably a good thing. I didn't have time to focus on the politics and the craziness of the world. And I didn't really have time to, the pandemic, it was just, we worked all the way through it. So it was kind of a distraction. But it is so interesting to me that the kind of Charleston bubble that we live in. Even I was up in Charlotte. We just reopened Five Church Charlotte.
Wow.
Just this last week. They were closed for 10 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me that the ability of people to be resilient through this.
It takes a lot. I think we have really good ownership at the top that had extremely well thought out strategy throughout the entire process. And I think that us being a restaurant group, we kind of had, we had a stock.
You had some capital saved up to make this work.
To make it work. And it wasn't easy. I mean, there was definitely decisions that had to be made that I know were very difficult decisions to be made.
Yeah.
And, pivoting, the constant pivoting.
Right.
And opening one restaurant, closing another because this one can't be
figuring
solved.
out the outdoor seating.
Exactly.
And that whole thing, especially in a place like downtown Charleston, your sidewalk space, your outdoor space is so limited.
Yeah.
So that you would see some places that over the summer, they're trying to get everybody outdoors. And it's like, and I'm sitting there going, why don't we just do second Sundays type, close down King Street to traffic and just put all the restaurants out on the dang street?
I was on a committee for a little bit. It was a sort of oversight committee. And we talked about things like that because it got to a point where it's like, you're making it impossible for us to survive. And without federal help and everything was so chaotic. I mean,
it was tough at first.
No plan.
It was so tough. It
still is even now.
Yeah.
There's not one voice coming down being like, this is how you do it. These are the, every state has different restrictions.
Well, we had a congressman that I've been here in Charleston for 15 years. Mm-hmm. This year was the first time I don't know how Joe Cunningham got my business email address, but all of a sudden I started getting emails. This is what we're doing. This is what you need to do. This is where we are right now. Here are links to everything you need to know from the Small Business Administration on how to get your loans and what you need to do and how to qualify. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the first time the government's ever provided the service without me even having to search for it or seek it out. Of course, we stumbled out of the gate with everything, trying to get anything done everyone piled on at once and tried to get things done, tried to get applying for federal aid and whatnot. Eventually it kind of worked itself out in some aspects, but unemployment stuff was a nightmare.
Unemployment was a nightmare. Even the PPP, I will say, my husband and I own a music school, and kind of
that's by the way, that's the other thing I got excited when I was researching you. I'm like, oh my goodness, they were perfect.
Yeah. But when we were applying for the PPP, I mean, we're small business owners. We have one location. I mean, talk about mom and pop. We are the epitome of it. We built the walls with our own hands. We took out very little
loans and
everything to get off the ground. And to get the PPP loan, we couldn't get our bank was telling us since we didn't have loans with them, we couldn't get it.
If you didn't have a credit card with them.
It was wild. It was wild. And I'm like, we are probably the people that need it so much more than the people that are getting it. And I'm hearing millions and millions of dollars are being given to these huge companies. And I'm like, I can't even get someone on the phone to tell me where I can apply. I remember one day I had my husband and I, between the two of us, we called 4 different banks. We called a business lawyer. We called accountants, everyone we can possibly get in touch with. And there was no resources.
Nobody knew.
One person would say, well, you have to go this direction. Then we would call that direction. And they would say, nope, you don't qualify with us. You have to go. And it was just
there was a couple of weeks where it was so frustrating and just so much red tape to get through. But eventually it did start to things started to figure it out. But even now in loan, I know you're going through loan forgiveness now. sorry people, if you're in a creative community, by the way, and you didn't take advantage of this, you should have.
Yeah.
And you probably still can. And you should look into, wherever you are in the United States, look into what resources are available to you, because you can get money that will be forgiven. So you can basically get free money to help you get through this as a business and as a gig worker, as someone who's in the creative community. As Madison just said, her and her husband run this music school. I'm sure without the money, eventually, it would have been an extremely dark year for you.
It would have.
Yeah.
I will say we were we were talking about the fear earlier.
Yeah.
So when all this happened and all this went down, we closed just before the public schools made the announcement that they were closing. And it was the height of our fear, and we couldn't get people on the phone, and it was, just kind of wild. But we did pivot to online lessons.
Yeah.
So we have a music school recording studio for kids.
Right.
And we pivoted to virtual lessons, which at the time, kids are locked in the house.
They had nothing to do.
Had nothing to do. Parents wanted them to still be kind of educated and entertained and all of those things. So once we got past the fear and got past the worry and all that stuff, and we pivoted, we actually did rather well through the pandemic. And we catered, certain classes and Zoom classes, and we even did band classes on Zoom, which was wild.
But the thing that's difficult with opening a brand new restaurant that you're a part of, in all of this that we just described, and I'm sure some people listening right now are probably getting tinges of that anxiety creeping back up on them again. But restaurants, while they can do takeout, I mean, you're in a destination city.
Yeah.
From what I can see from the pictures online, like you've stained glass ceilings and just this beautiful location, beautiful building, beautiful decoration going on inside. So it's an experience. It's more than just takeout. And to launch in the middle of all of this. And then the other thing that I read is that the whole front of house, it's an all-female front of house, which is exciting as well.
Yeah.
Was that by design or just by chance?
It was just by chance. Our company in general really mostly, I think almost every management position is promoted from within. So it definitely wasn't by design that we had an all-female management team. But the best players for the job were put into place. I mean, I think each one of us brings something to the table that we need in that position,
right,
in that role. And we work really well together. I think women can be catty and can kind of step on each other, and it's not that at all. We're so supportive. We're all in the position and kind of learning and growing together.
You're all kind of born in the fire with this project.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So,
and we've been, sorry.
No, go ahead.
We've been on the project kind of from the beginning. Like we saw every stage of it, and we took the place down to studs. So
wow.
It was,
Wow. I can't imagine the amount of fear and on every level for you guys being involved from the beginning and watching how what's going on in the world.
The uncertainty.
I mean, downtown Charleston, I think with your location during the Black Lives Matter marches and things like that, where we saw a lot of restaurants and storefronts, mostly on King Street, I believe, that took a lot of damage in the middle of a pandemic.
Right.
And so it's like all of this for so many reasons,
right,
of things going on in this in 2020.
If you had told me this was going to be the last year of my life, before this all started, I would have.
When you guys got named best new restaurant in the country, I mean, I feel like the whiplash of all that stress and anxiety. It's like, oh, wait a second. Here's some good news.
You know what's crazy though is we knew it. We believed it. Every single person working there truly believes it. And we all are a part of it. And we poured so much of ourselves into it. The back of house team is they're so young and motivated and inspired, and every day, I mean, the hours that they put in and the product that they still are able to put out is just, that's inspiring for me. Watching the people around me be so, bought in. And so when we did get the award, it was something that, we're putting out this product and we have this amazing service staff and we have this beautiful restaurant and it's opening in a pandemic. And we can't share it with as many people as we like. But, the award came out and then that kind of catapulted us onto the
now
track.
People are interested.
Yeah.
And it's pretty interesting to think of from a creative standpoint. Many musicians, painters, dancers, theater people, their money gig is food and beverage.
And that's how I got into it. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about how you got into it. Let's get into to the weeds here. If you grew up, did you grow up in LA or did you just
No,
you went?
I grew up in Long Island, New York. And
what
then
part?
East Islip.
Williston Park, right here.
Get out! Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
All right, hold on. We're gonna start speaking some Long Island.
Long Island.
Yeah.
All right. The word off still gets me every time. It hurts my jaw to say it the way, like off.
Oh, my wife will pick up every little word that still hangs on, like the word drawer.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say it. I say draw. Yeah.
There's certain ones that I'll catch myself every once in a while. Like, but yeah, so I grew up in Long Island. I moved to Brooklyn when I was 17. I started high school early. My parents had retired and they moved to Arizona. And I was like, this is...
How did you lose all of that accent?
I had a dialect coach.
I was about to say East Islip, for those of you who don't know Long Island, East Islip is like heavily, like think Joey Buttafuoco, Amy Fisher. Yes. You're like, that's that level of Long Island. And then you go to Brooklyn, which has... And we're not talking about hipster Brooklyn. We're talking about like Brooklyn before it became a hot spot when the accent was super thick.
Yes.
You had a dialect coach.
I did. I used to actually,
Amazing.
I had a dialect coach and I used to put the words that I really struggled with on my mirror and on my refrigerator and on a carton of milk or whatever it was. And anytime I went to reach for that thing, I'd have to say it 10 times. I kind of broke myself.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I wow. Wow. Because that's a lot of dedication to get rid of, because it's such a distinct thing.
I had a dialect coach for like a good couple of years. It was.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're in Long Island.
So I'm in Long Island. Go to Brooklyn. I started at FIT and I started working at Armani Exchange on Fifth Avenue at the flagship store. And it just wasn't my cup of tea at all.
Right.
It wasn't. I was kind of doing some modeling at the time and I fell into an acting gig and I was like, oh, I got the bug.
Yeah, this is fun.
This is really fun. This is what I want to do. So I spent a little more time in New York. I had a crazy incident with a taxi cab driver and I was like, you know what? I'm kind of over the city. A young girl living in the city in Brooklyn by herself and I just didn't feel safe. So I was like, I gotta go somewhere. I gotta do something. So I went out to LA. And the whole time I'd always supported myself working in restaurants. So even when I was in college, I was working in bars and restaurants.
What was that cultural shift like for you when you go from New York, East Coast to LA is so different?
Oh, I loved it.
You loved it?
I loved it. I mean, I love New York, but I also love LA. I mean, I think I take the best, because I'm not in the cities anymore, but I take the best qualities of the cities and like they're such a part of me. It was a big shift. To me, it was just a lot of it was being outside and being able to kind of always have that weather that you're at the beach and you're surfing and you have all this time for hiking and anything you want to, that was a big kind of mind change for me.
Yeah, New York is it's a long winter.
Yeah.
It's kind of, by the time it's done, you're so ready to move on to warmer weather.
But also the seasons there, I love the seasons in New York. So the shift for me, I think the biggest thing about it was I felt like, and I say this with like pockets of LA. I lived, you name it, I lived there from the Valley to West Hollywood to Burbank, Santa Monica, anywhere. But I found really genuine people in a different way that people are genuine in New York. It's it's like you got to kind of crack through it in New York. And the people in LA, I just thought were really welcoming. I don't know. Most people don't have that experience or don't talk about that in LA. And I did, especially the acting community. I felt like it truly is a community, and everyone's in it with the same passion and the same inspiration and the same objective. And
Did you find that the people in that acting community that you were all people transplanting from other places? Yeah, that might be part of the.
That's true. Some of my best friends are like Midwest people that transplanted LA. But yeah, so then I was out there and working in restaurants again, and I would get little gigs here and there, and then I would not work for 3 to 6 months and just kind of travel. I was always like a big travel person wherever I can go as often as I could do it. And then what happened next? LA. Oh, so I had this crazy wild idea. I was doing stand-up for a little while. Which
wait, hold on. I did not find anything on you about stand-up.
I wasn't very good, and I'm not very funny. But so when I go all in on something, I'm all in. And for acting, for me, it was like I just never could reach. I was getting bit parts here and there. I could never reach the next level, and I was like, fuck this. Like, excuse my language, but screw this. I'm gonna make it happen for myself. That's my only chance. So for about a year, I would go up 5 nights a week.
So you were like serious.
When I say I'm in it, I'm like, wow. I'm in. I used to just go up and I would put my phone to record the entire session. I would go up completely unscripted and I would just talk for 5 minutes at an open mic. Mm-hmm. And if I got one laugh out of somebody at one point, I would take that and try and write something around it. So by the end of a year of doing this, like really soul crushing career choice that I was going down, after that year, I had about a 10-minute solid set. And then I was like, well, this isn't going to happen either.
Yeah, that's tough.
It was tough.
I don't know if most people understand how hard it is to come up with that first 5, 10, 15-minute set.
Right.
Like how much work it takes to get to that point where you have a solid, tight set.
Also, I hung out with so many comedians that are just like their comedic timing was impeccable. And I mean, they could tell me a story about the Wheaties that they have for breakfast and I'm on the floor rolling, mm-hmm. and like, I just didn't have that. So my problem is that a lot of times I go in on things that I'm all in, but I'm not actually very good at it.
Well, there are the people in like when you grew up, you had some people that could naturally have the ability to tell a story, to capture everyone's attention.
Right.
Those people, you would be like, why aren't you taking advantage of that?
Yes.
Like,
yes.
You could either be like really good at stand up or something where you're kind of the center of attention, or a really good salesperson, and you find, and then they go on to become like an engineer, and you're like, what?
How did this happen? Yes.
Yeah.
My ambition always like gets me to a certain level, but then I'm like, my talent doesn't quite equal the ambition in something.
Well, you might be selling yourself short there, though.
Well, I think now I've found my niche in restaurants in what I'm doing right now. I really do. It took a lot of kind of meandering to get there, but
I imagine that the self-confidence that you must have built up from getting up on stage 5 nights a week.
Oh, see, it was the opposite.
You think you don't?
Yeah, I drank a lot. A lot of Jameson in those days.
You forgot all of it. No, but that's there's something about. Now, I've never done stand-up, so I don't know this firsthand, but I used to be a musician. Mm-hmm. And in a similar fashion, when you have a bad set, when things go bad, it's soul-crushing. Yeah. But the more that happens, the less soul-crushing it is. The more dead inside you maybe become. I don't know what it is.
That is so true. But also when it works, that's like the drug. When it works so well.
When it works, it doesn't get old.
Right. And you could do the same set in a different room and get a completely different response. Yeah. Or you just go on after someone, that killed the room for you. And then you're getting up there to a dead room and there's no coming back. You know, like
the energy has been...
It's so crazy. And I think that's why I ended up in restaurants, because I genuinely love people and interacting and connection and all of that kind of stuff, which kind of leads me to my next place I went with that. So after stand-up, I got this wild hair. I was watching back-to-back movies by myself. I used to go to movies all the time by myself. And in between the two movies, I was sitting in a coffee shop and I just got this journal and I just started doodling and was like, I could write a book, my life story is pretty interesting and whatever, blah, blah. So I started scribbling in this book and I ended up skipping the second movie, got a couple more drinks in me and just wrote pen to paper, didn't stop writing, wrote my life story.
Wow.
And on the inside front cover, I don't know where all these ideas came from when I was doing this. On the inside front cover, I wrote my name, my address, my home phone number. And I wrote, I'm nobody famous. I'm not that important, but this is my story. And you're the next chapter. And so I left it and just wanted to see what would happen.
So wait, you left it in like an apartment or at a hotel?
No, I left it at the coffee shop.
At the coffee shop. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry. I was like, wait, where?
I just left it to see like, okay.
Yeah. If anyone would ever pick up on it and do anything with it.
Exactly. Well, then I kind of expanded that idea and I did it 50 times. So I copied my life story 50 times in journals and I saved up.
Did you handwrite these?
I handwrote everyone. I had I had an indentation on my finger from handwriting all of them. And I copied the same exact thing from when I decided to do it, whatever I put in that one. And it was the most honest, unedited, raw. I mean, there was all different kinds of stories. My brother struggled with addiction a little bit, and I wrote about, the impact that had on me, and I was really just honest about it. I wrote about an ex-boyfriend that I had that had told me he loved me, and I never said it back. And I was like, you know what, I did, and I owe it to him. So here's his phone number. Call him and let him know that I did love him at that time. So these were the kinds of stories, and it was really just honest.
Wow.
And so I saved up, I think it was $2,000, might have been $3,000. And I decided I'm going to go on a Greyhound bus, and I'm going to put these as far as $3,000 will take me across the country. Just leave them in bookstores.
Wow.
Happened 2 weeks before I went out on this trip. I went to a music show, actually. My husband's a musician. I went to his show. I just gave away the punchline there, but he ended up being my husband. I went to his show, and we kind of talked afterwards, and he was like, what are you up to? We had mutual friends, and I said, I have this crazy idea. I'm going on this bus, and I'm going on Greyhound, and I'm going across the world, and I'm going to tell my story. I'm self-publishing. And he thought I was mental, but also by the end of it, his band was just breaking up at the time. And by the end of it, excuse my language again, he said, fuck it, I'm in.
Do it.
I don't know if I was asking you, but
you weren't really invited, but okay. New twist.
Exactly.
Hold on, I got to write a couple more pages on my book.
Exactly.
50 times.
But so we ended up 2 weeks after that. He had a Toyota Scion, and we got a mattress pad for the back of the car.
Wait. XA, XB.
Oh gosh, I
was
think
it the boxy one?
It was the boxy one, toaster we called it.
Yeah, because I used to have a Scion XA.
I love the Scion.
Which was a tiny little hatchback.
Yes, they're the best.
Yeah, I was like, if you spent 2 adults in a Scion XA, you guys are like meant for each other.
We're snuggled.
And XB is still not that much bigger, a little more headroom. I guess.
But we ended up So we set off to San Francisco. Was our first stop. We went into Canada. We went 18,000 miles across the country and put these books all over. But we were sleeping in Walmart parking lots and pitching tents, and we were sleeping in rest stops. And our big expenditure, we'd get a hotel for a night, and take a real shower, not a truck stop and stuff. But it was probably the best time of my life.
This truck stop showers are not as bad as they sound. Some of them are gross.
Some of them are, yeah.
But then you come across a nice one, and you're like, oh, that was
luxury.
That was the best $5 I ever spent.
Exactly. We would go to the dollar store or something, and I'd get face masks, and we'd stay in the hotel for the night and be like, oh my gosh, which is crazy because it wasn't that wasn't how we lived. I mean, we lived well in LA,
Right.
But it was when you're out on the road, those things were luxuries. Yeah.
Yeah. You're like, I could spend, $100 on a hotel tonight.
Or I can go to 2 more cities.
Or I can eat for a week.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Learned a lot about budgeting at that time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what every band does. Mm-hmm. Sleeping on, going on, playing shows and just talking to people like, hey, can we crash on your floor? Exactly. Or people will offer it up, especially in different music communities. People are like, hey, you come stay at our place.
We actually stayed at the owner of the Sparrow in Park Circle. It was back, 8 years ago now. Ryan played a show there. So every city we went to, I'd drop a book and my husband would play a show.
That's so great.
And he was touring with a bigger band at the time, and he'd played really big venues, and he kind of lost the reason why he was doing it, which is why he wanted to go on the trip. So he was playing these smaller venues, very intimate, just acoustic guitar, not a full band. And but the owner of the Sparrow put us up.
Yeah.
And when we came through South Carolina, and he doesn't own it anymore, and we can't find him, but it meant so much. That's what it was. It was every part of this, from the book to being out on the road to meeting people and just being so open to connection. We made all these connections, and it was incredible. So 30 people out of the 50 found my books, and they got back to me in some capacity, whether it be just reaching out through a text message or calling me. We got to meet a couple of people when we were out on the road, in person. It was wild.
That's so great.
Wild. Yeah.
So has anyone kind of taken the ball and run with it and started to take it to the next step?
So this story is kind of long-winded. I don't know if I was planning on talking about this, but
you give the Cliff's Notes version if you want, or you could tell a long version.
There's a couple things that happened. I had after the first round, we went out. We went back to LA, had to build up our funds a little bit more, so it worked for a month and a half. and then saved all our money. I took really big meetings on the idea because I had an agent at the time and they kind of pitched it. But I pitched the idea to Bad Robot, which is crazy. So I showed up at the time. I didn't have a car, which was why I was going by bus, by the way. I missed that part. But I drove a scooter and I had a meeting with Brian Burke of Bad Robot, who is like second in charge. And I showed up to the set of Star Trek II with my little book, like my handwritten book under my arm in my backpack and like on my scooter. And I'm on the set of Star Trek. Like it was so unreal, the whole experience of it. But I pitched to him and then we pitched to CAA. We pitched to a couple other people, just the concept. And the biggest problem I was having was everybody was like, well, what's the purpose? Like, what do you want to get out of this? And my answer was always, I don't want a purpose. I want to see where this leads. I want to see like, it's almost like a social experiment. I want to see what happens from this. And then, you know, a couple of people wanted me to change and edit the journal to make it more, you know,
give a specific storyline.
Yes. And that for me, the guerrilla style of the project was what made it special and what made people respond. So I just said, you know what, I'm going to keep doing this my way. I don't need it to be this big thing. I was never doing it to make money off of it or whatever. I just genuinely thought it was a cool concept. I'll tell you, the first time somebody found my book, we were in Portland and they texted me and said, is this real? And I was literally jumping up and down like a child. I was like, somebody found it. It's the first book. Within 5 text messages with a complete stranger, this person, I left my house when I was 16, so I was kind of on my own very early. And he was gay and his parents kicked him out when he was 16. And he just related so much to that part of like when I wrote about being on my own at 16. And he related that so much that just opened up with five or six text messages. This complete strangers like telling me his life story after he just read mine. And like it was so special. So,
wow.
So then I did a couple things with it. Again, when I say I go all in on things, I'm all in. Yeah. But I also never have had the funding behind me. So I decided that I was going to make these books. They're called If Found, Please Read. And I was going to have them so that I could put them out and people would do the same thing I did. And then, you know, the streets are going to become this giant library of public stories for everyone, right? That was my grandiose idea. Well, I couldn't afford to have the books made, so I learned how to bind books, which is a very fascinating thing. Like you actually sew in the pages and glue. And like I had a whole little workshop I set up.
You went total DIY.
I'm telling you, like when I go in, I'm in. And then I would go around to like local bookstores and be like, hey, would you put these on the shelves? And so they would. I'd sell like 10 at a time or whatever it was. Wow. Start a little Etsy store. And then there was a couple girls in, it starts with an S. I can't remember the city. They were like 2 16-year-old girls that had found the book and they mailed me their book of their life story. And they were like, so we mailed one to you and we have one that we are putting out into the world and whatever. So that was the idea. The whole idea was to make it be this snowball thing. And then we had gotten back to LA. We went to so many cities across the country and we fell in love with everywhere we went. So we were like, let's move. Let's take a year. Let's go. I mean, also along the road, we fell in love, of course. And how do you not under those conditions? We were just very compatible.
That's the best litmus test is traveling in those conditions with people, because it's not for everybody.
I agree.
And yeah, bands have broken up. Countless bands have broken up from going on their first tour.
It's true.
Because there's going to be people who just crack.
Yep.
Or you're going to learn more about somebody and you'll be like,
Exactly. And you're with them. You can't get away. Yeah. Like there's no getting away from this person. You're on the road for, 3 months.
And there's a skill to even people who you admire learning how to distance yourself while you're cramped in a space with them.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Our first date on the road was like official because we had said like nothing can happen. This is business. Like we're just going to go out and have fun and whatever, right?
Did either of you believe that?
Honestly, I did. I truly did. That? I did because I was like, I'm on a mission. Like I have I can't get distracted right now. But our first date was sleigh riding in, I think it was Montana, in somebody's backyard. Like we just used their hill and went sleigh riding. And I was like, come on. Like, how do you not fall in love under those circumstances? But so we ended up moving to Austin when we got back and we were like, let's take a year. Let's go somewhere.
What a great city to move to.
I love Austin. I really, really do. But
did you go to Emo's? Did he play at Emo's?
Yes, he did. But he's from Texas. So he had actually played that circuit, a lot when in his earlier years. But I ended up getting pregnant after about 9 months when we were in.
It happens.
It happens. And then everything just kind of shifted. It was like, okay, we're going to do this.
Now you got to think like.
And another person depends on us, and we cannot any longer sleep in Walmart parking lots.
Well, that shift to living there's not a good term for it, but a selfish life to a selfless life.
100%.
And it happens the second that child is born. You can prepare for it all you want, but the second that child is born, like a switch goes off, and you're no longer living for yourself.
For me, it was just finding out I was pregnant. It was like immediate.
Really?
I mean, it was like, we have to start planning.
Yeah.
Like if we're doing this, we have to.
Yeah. Your whole trajectory changes.
Everything. And your priorities change. And your, I was a stay-at-home mom with Beckett for, I think, the first 3 years. I didn't work.
That's great that you were able to do that.
I agree.
Which, that was in Austin when you were staying home?
That was in Austin. And then we went back to LA. We just had connections there, and it was easier for us to.
You had a society, a family,
external
people to help raise the children.
Your
village.
My village. And so Ryan actually got a job working in a restaurant as a general manager, which...
Say musicians and food and bev.
It's true. Hand in hand. And he was working insane hours, and he was also still kind of touring with the band like every once in a while.
What was the name of his band? You could say, I mean, if you don't want to say.
No. His band was Resident Hero.
Okay.
But he toured with Flyleaf a lot. I don't know if you know them. But so he ended up working, and I was just home all the time and never seeing him, and that didn't work. So then we moved to San Diego. He got a job in a music school there, and there were so many things that he was like, they do this well, but if they did this, this could be really something amazing. And
that's so cool.
And so he ended up working there for like 2 years, and really got to know the business model and the numbers and everything about it. And then we got to a point where we were like, you know what, we got to do this on our own. And so my parents had retired in South Carolina by that point, and my second baby was on the way. And
as things so happen.
Yeah. And so we said the only way we could do this, really do it, is if, we have that village that you talked about, and my mom, and she could help us, and my dad. And so we packed up with a half-written business plan and moved across the country. We moved into my parents' house, which they're very gracious for having us, but it was a little wild living with them.
The other huge test of a relationship.
Yes.
How was your husband with all of that? It must have been extremely like.
Yeah, for me it was a lot easier because of my family.
But for him, he's got to be on best behavior.
Well, and he's 38 years old with 2 kids and a wife, and moving in with in-laws. But I think we always kind of kept our eye on the prize, and it was never like, embarrassing that this is what we're doing. We're like, this is the sacrifice we make.
Yeah, it's not even a matter of embarrassment. It's just a matter of there's still that thing like. You've got to impress your in-laws. Right. You know what I'm saying? You got to be on.
You not only have to impress them. We ended up, my dad kind of put his house up against the business in the beginning, so we had to be successful.
Well, your parents, they must know from the kind of person you are that if you're involved, anything less than 100% was not going to happen. Yeah. So you're going to make it succeed one way or the other.
Yeah. And I think that's why Ryan and I are such a good team, because we both have that kind of drive, and this is his passion. I mean, he's a musician to the bones. I play the piano and I enjoy music thoroughly, but I mean, he's a talent unlike any I've ever seen in my life. And so the combination of us together working on this, I think, was
right.
And he's taken it. I mean, I've kind of taken a huge step back and focused on kind of where I landed in the restaurant, and he's just taken a music school.
Do you guys ever play out together?
Not really. We play. That's kind of. He's focused so much on the school. He still writes, and that's what we do in our free time. Like, honestly, that's my favorite times are not when we go out and have a dinner or do something. It's me and him just hanging at the house and writing music together. And I play piano and I write a lot of stuff, but I can't sing a lick. And so he always writes my melodies. So that's that's what I do in my fun free time. I can forget about everything else and just kind of.
I feel like a call over to Allendale Green is in
Oh my gosh,
you know what I'm saying? Like,
yes.
you guys could.
We've had students play out there.
Yeah. You do a kind of a School of Rock type of thing.
Yeah. We do our we have what are they called? We don't call them it. We just have our kids come and jam, and we use Poorhouse. So they'll do like a recital. Deck. That's the word. Yeah. Most music schools or stuff would do recitals, and instead we do actual performances, like out and they play live and stuff. So
fun.
Yeah, it's cool.
So much fun
to see that in kids. That kind of passion behind music is just it's pretty wild.
Well, you're filling in the cracks that like a school system just can't fill.
Yeah.
The arts are so important, and you hear people say that, but to put it into practice and to really enrich kids' lives with this, and give them a place to belong, because it's difficult. I don't know if you remember being in school, especially in like Long Island, right? And all the kids that were into football, and they would talk about football, and you'd be like, I don't care about that.
That was our mission when we opened the school. Exactly what you're talking about right now.
Yeah, just those things that were popular that kids would gravitate towards. And I would always try to understand it and try to like figure out, okay, is this something for me? And whatnot. But the things that weren't as wildly popular as far as like the mainstream in school.
Yeah.
You didn't have a big music presence. Like
they weren't necessarily available. It wasn't available. What we do, and I think there's this stigma of piano lessons where you're like sitting and your back is straight and you're posturing and everything.
It's all classical stuff and
yes, and that's how they teach it, and that's not how we teach. We have 15 different teachers that all teach.
You have 15 teachers at the school?
Yeah. We have over 200 students right now.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I had no idea. Yeah. It's funny because when I looked at when I first looked at the studio, I kept misreading the name of the studio/school because I kept, for some reason, I want to see it as Whiskey Studios.
Oh, God. No.
Because it's white key.
Right.
And just like my brain, I don't know, maybe I have a problem. But I kept saying, I was like, that's a very Charleston like appropriate name, but I don't know if it's a good name for kids.
Maybe we didn't think that through.
And then I was like, oh, duh. I'm just a moron.
Well, also our last name is White. So
right. And the key would be
the white keys of the piano,
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
200 students.
Yeah. Yeah. We have like 8 band classes to see, 8 through 13-year-olds play together. And that's the thing. We have a music lab upstairs. So we took an old commercially zoned house on Ashley River Road, and we converted all the bedrooms into teaching rooms. We blew the carriage house into a recording studio. And the whole upstairs is a music lab, we call it. So they can come in and take their lessons, and then whoever's there can just jam. We have a whole PA, like a whole stage set up upstairs that they could just play together.
Do you teach them recording stuff as well? Because that, to me, there's a whole other level of musician when you get into music production.
Especially with home recording now. I mean, you can release music, quality music, from home recordings.
Right. And they could do it from their cell phones. That's the best part is like the I remember playing, this is in the 90s when I did all this stuff, and just like trying to figure out how to use a 4-track was a big deal. Right. Like there was no online resources to figure out how to bounce tracks and do things like that. And so you had to figure it out, or you had to have somebody that knew how to use it to teach you. And now everything's so people can just pop up YouTube and learn things.
Right.
But to have someone who really understands, there's nothing beats somebody showing you and answering your question about that stuff. Because there's all these kids that are putting out music that's unbelievable to me. And
have you been on TikTok at all? Because it's crazy.
I won't do it.
Really?
My wife has jumped onto it. And it's not anything other than I am so trying to get off of social media.
Yeah, it's addicting.
Trying to keep up with everything.
Yeah.
Like I was like, I saw Snapchat. I was like, no. Yeah. And look, it just came and went because And Instagram or Facebook really is what it comes down to. They just see what's coming up on the horizon and they gobble it up or just clone it.
Right.
So yeah, Instagram like completely took away the fire of Snapchat, and now they're trying to do the same thing with TikTok. But I don't know what's going on. I'm not sure if they will be successful.
TikTok's algorithm is just so fascinating. I went down that rabbit hole when it first came out. And
but I see what my wife does when she gets on it. She giggles. Yes. She has a great time. But she'll be sitting there looking at her phone for a long period of time. And I'm like, no, that's what I don't want right now.
It's true. I'm telling you, if you found TikTok music, you'd be in trouble. Because it's also the level of talent that these people are putting out. So the algorithm will put in your For You page things that you like and whatever. So I get a lot of musicians on my page. And I'm just wowed. Like these people are sitting in their hallway just like, why are you not on a stage somewhere performing for thousands and thousands of people? It's wild.
I always get impressed by, do you use Reddit at all? So you know how they have their broadcast, the Reddit broadcast things? And you'll see musicians get up there and there'll be like 10,000 people watching that stream and commenting. And it'll just be like a musician with a piano or a guitar or something like that playing, you know, to the internet, a random person. And that
it's changed music. It really has.
That to me is amazing because you're just, you're playing to an audience. You would never, as a musician, if you played to 50 people on a given night in any town, that was a great night because trying to attract people anywhere takes time and effort and getting them to come out of their house and all of the things.
There is nothing like a live show, though. You can be in a room and playing to 10,000 people in, you know, virtually, but you're not even going to touch playing to 20 people live.
Exactly. Well, there's an energy thing that doesn't exist. I mean,
that goes back to the restaurant, like you talked about before with takeout. You know, we never pushed that at the restaurant. It wasn't when we were pivoting or we had to think about our strategy. It doesn't translate for our concepts, I think, because so much of it is the experience and the atmosphere and the ambiance and, you know, the service and the connection, the stories of, you know, we're in a historic building. So the stories of the walls around you, you know, like all of that stuff. And it's the same thing, I think, with musicians. Like it's special, but it doesn't translate.
There's a feeling when you step into different facets of a place that has a history. So when you walk into a room, you feel the vibe right away. But you know, as a musician, when you get up on the stage and you look out, you know, there's places where you kind of get the chills. I remember being on tour in Nashville, and we went to this old recording studio that was preserved, and they had a reverb room. Have you ever been in one of those? It's like almost round room, and it's just natural reverb. You go in there, and you're getting like this ridiculous, real natural reverb effect. And I remember our drummer walked in there, and like all the pictures that were on the wall of the different musicians that had recorded in the studio. And then he walked in and he just started crying.
Yes.
He was just like emotionally just overcome in just being there and knowing the history and feeling that just magic and that soul of the place. Yeah. That doesn't exist online.
No,
you can't get it. And the other thing that sucks online is, sometimes you don't really want to know what people are thinking because they say awful things. I can't imagine being, especially women in music, because like the awful things that will just, who knows who's saying it and what their intentions are, but they'll just, it happens every time there's like a large gathering of people that can comment and you'll see some comments and you're like, what are you doing? Like, would you say that to somebody if they were standing in front of you? Would you really like say that to them? Would you scream that out at a show?
I know. I think even just in general in social media, people are, even when you're not talking about a show in that case, but just in general, people post things and I'm like, would you have this conversation?
Yeah. And the anonymous way that people can just say and you wonder, are they saying that for shock value? Do they really think that? Is that a thought?
That's the worrying thing, especially after the last year in the political climate and everything else. People are saying things. I'm like, I never knew that about you. But now it's hard not to judge. It's hard not to form an opinion of that person.
I think that the what has happened is part of the reason why, like personally, why I rarely get onto Facebook.
Yeah.
You know, because I just don't like. There's things I've learned about y'all that I didn't want to know, and it changes my opinion, and then it makes me upset, and then
it no longer became a place of like pictures of people's new babies and getting married or whatever. It became this place of like, I don't understand it either. Like, has anybody ever commented something on social media and changed somebody's opinion ever in the history of anything? Like, have you ever gotten on and written like, oh, I support this and this and this, and somebody, comments, you know what, you're totally right. You're totally right, and I now support it too. Right. No, you're doing that for the, I don't know.
Just to get other people on board with you that already they are there.
Yeah.
But there are things I've learned about things that didn't, there's certain social things that we've learned, especially over, say, the Me Too movement type of things. This whole, I hate the term, but cancel culture type of thing. But there's some valuable lessons that have been learned, especially for men, especially for straight men, like little comments that we make that we are innocently making,
right?
And how they're perceived by other people. And you're like, oh, I had no idea. And you feel like, oh my gosh, I've done that before.
Was never the intention.
I've said that before. I have thought that like I was just being a nice person. And meanwhile, I'm being a creep. And so I think that there is some value in all of this. And if you're a person that hasn't learned that from this, that's kind of scary to me. Because either you're that good and you've never done those things, which there are those people. Congratulations. Or you think that you don't believe that that's the case.
Right.
And that's scary.
Yeah.
Because, I'm in my mid 40s and I'm still learning immense amounts of things about people, and how we interact and what it means. Like you working now in the restaurant business must go through an emotional roller coaster every day dealing with the public, especially during these times. But someone can say something extremely genuinely nice to you and it will make your day better.
Yeah.
And on the other side, they could say something rude to you. And you're like, what the hell, man? What did I do? I just came to work today and I'm doing my job and I'm trying to serve people and help them and enlighten their lives. And you just totally stepped on me. Why,
you know what's funny is at this point in my career, I feel like the front of the house and the guest, I'd been doing that for so long. Like I said, since I was 15 years old. So that weighs less on me. I don't think people control my emotions as far as guests. Yes, I definitely feed off of when somebody comes in and they're just raving. Or we had somebody propose. We had a guest propose at our restaurant last week. And that, like, you're totally right. I don't take the negatives as hard as I would have maybe, years ago. Now for me, it's managing the people that work for me. And that kind of psychology behind that both intrigues me so much and I love it. But that's the part that I'm really getting my head wrapped around. Like, how do I keep someone motivated, keep them inspired, have them, come into a positive environment every single day, but at the same time, be disciplined, hold them accountable, all that stuff. So learning that part of it is, I like the level I'm at now where, the front of house kind of guest stuff is the icing on the cake. But that where I'm being learned, the managing of people where I'm learning and being challenged and
all right, I've got a management question for you.
There we go.
All right. So when you have somebody on your team who starts treating the customers, they have an outlook to it's us versus them. In other words, they're going to battle. Like, these people are, everything is an affront to them. And maybe because of the not being able to handle the thing I just said about, like, somebody can just totally flip your day on it just with a comment. Yeah. How do you manage people like that? Because some people you come across and they're always they're angry at the thing that's paying their paycheck,
I think for me and definitely with this company, it's a culture that we set up from the beginning. So it starts at hiring and at any sense of that. There are a few things that are like directly fireable in our company, or at least, for me in the restaurant. That's like no question, you're fired, you're out, you're done. And one of the things the owner has, instilled in us is persistent negativity, because it's so Toxic, exactly. Yeah. And it affects everything and everyone around you. So if someone has that attitude, it's nipped in the bud before it gets to problem level.
Have you ever had a situation where there was someone like that you were able to turn around before just parting ways with them? Has there been a method of...
Well, I think that especially with the work we do, right? Yeah. As servers, as front of house. I'm talking front of house now.
Yeah.
But as servers, the work that they do, it's impossible. It's impossible in any job to come in and just have a smile on your face every single second.
You can't be on all the time.
You can't. And with the hours that they put in, and with the time that they, spend, and especially our staff we have now, they care so much about it. Like this award that we got means something to every one of them. You know, I had a server who he brought me in. It like made me tear up. He brought me in a copy of the restaurant, the Marketplace restaurant that was in the 60s. It was a copy of a menu that he got off eBay and brought in. Like, that's how much these people care about the history of the building, about the restaurant in general, about where we came from and what we do. But so when there's a weekend, like it's Valentine's weekend, it's going to be bananas the entire weekend.
Tell me about it.
And it's impossible to not staff people, because you can't have a staff when your weeks go from you're doing this amount of revenue to you're doing this amount of revenue just for 1 week.
It's like a Black Friday for florists and restaurants.
Right. You have to staff. They're doubles, and they're working really long hours. I think finding little ways to reach them and keep them motivated through it. I did this really stupid thing in lineup one time. Not really stupid, but it's kind of lame. I brought in Twizzlers for everyone, because I've read this article that if you smile for 8 seconds, it releases a certain amount of serotonin in your brain, and it makes you think that you're happy. So in lineup,
it makes you think that you're happy.
Right. Like, and it just kind of changes your... So in lineup, I brought in these Twizzlers, and I made everyone sit there with the Twizzler in their mouth, making them smile for 8 seconds to start the shift. And then I set up little Twizzler stations around the restaurant. At any point, if they were like worn out or they had to whatever, I was like, take a Twizzler break, you know? And I think it's finding ways to motivate them in little things like that, and not letting, if one person starts going, I'm exhausted, or, this table's being completely unreasonable and whatever, it's stepping in and kind of managing the situation.
Yeah.
And managing their perspective on it. Because I think everyone, you choose the mood you're going to be in. You choose what you let bother you and what you don't. And I think a lot of times it's simply a matter of switching the perspective. So
yeah, and the reason why I bring that up is because so many creative people, for all of the reasons we talked about earlier, of not feeling like you're being catered to at a young age, they tend to be introspective, kind of introverted type people. Mm-hmm. And that feeling of us versus them, and that feeling like you are constantly not being heard or whatever it is, I would imagine is pretty prevalent. And now you're in a situation where you're working in food and beverage, where you're doing customer service, and you've got to be, as you said, all of those things. You've got to smile. You've got to be happy. You've got to make this work for the people so they come back and you can get paid.
Well, the big thing for us too is I want people to want to work for us.
Yeah.
That's another thing the owner has kind of instilled in our head. Like, if you don't want to be here, nobody's forcing you to. I go in every day. My hours are long. It's challenging. I'm pushed beyond my abilities sometimes, and I have to figure things out. There's a lot of tough things in the job that I do. But there isn't a day that I go in that I don't enjoy what I'm doing.
So you show up and you're excited to get in the door.
I mean, I might not be whistling while I work every single day, but there isn't a tone that I think you have to set. Mm-hmm. And if I set that tone, then the people around me will want to work that way. Will come in and be, grateful for the job, especially with everything going on right now. I mean, so many people are out of work. So many people are working in restaurants that don't have any customers. So many people are whatever. So again, it goes back to like changing the perspective of, you can choose to come in and be miserable and whatever, or you can come in and be grateful for your job and enjoy your job. And if you don't like it, go get another one. That's
it's a tough food and beverage. Much like when we were talking about you going on the road trip, I learned at an early age because my first jobs were food and beverage, and I was like, I can't do this. I am not cut of this cloth. Like the amount of I guess, it was a different time as well. And it might have just been the restaurant I was working at.
It's easier to do when you're proud of the place you're working at.
Yeah, because it was an Italian restaurant with Italians, not like New York Italian. No, like from Italy, spoke with an accent, the owners, the management, most of the people working there.
Yeah.
And then the whole, the back of house was all Latin American people and very little communication. So here I am, this young kid, just constantly being berated in different ways. And I was like, how do people do this? And I would see other waitresses like cry on a daily basis. And I'm like, I can't do this. I'm not meant for this. That's so sad.
That was your experience.
Yeah. So I was just like, I'm never working in that industry. So I kind of cut that out from my life at an early age. Because I was like, this is a nightmare. And as I got older, I realized I was just at a really dark place. Like, that place was nuts.
They were, I think that's what I've gravitated so much and gone so all in on this company because it's so much about company culture. You know what's funny is I had an ad out for a position for one of our restaurants that is opening, and I was getting all these resumes, and to be completely honest, I was very intimidated. Their resumes were, they could run circles around me as far as what they had on paper. And I did one of the interviews, and the guy was nice enough, and he was extremely intelligent, knew, specifics about everything, things that were kind of over my head, if I'm going to be completely honest. But at the same time, when the question of company culture or management style or whatever came up, it was an instant. Like, he spoke for 1 minute and gave me the answer that I was like, you could be so good on paper, but you don't fit what this company is about. You don't fit the culture that we have. And I think it's unique in a company that's expanding this way, because we're not corporate and we're not, sometimes it makes it hard that there's not handbooks for everything. And here, this is how you're a GM. This is how you generally manage the restaurant. And these are the steps that you take and whatever. Sometimes it's hard because I have to figure out a lot of things, or I have to depend on the owner probably more than he would like of a general manager. But he's so open to be a mentor and not teach it this cookie cutter, this is the way you do the job and whatever. That takes all this kind of soul and the heart out of it. And that's what's different about this group for me, and why I really didn't have any intention of getting into restaurant management and kind of did.
Yeah. It sounds like a perfect lineup for the type of personality that you have.
Yeah.
That you've developed over the years, as far as just, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So when it comes down to, from a creative standpoint with your music school, and now with the, food and beverage with Tempest, where do you see this going? And do you have a long-term strategy here? Or are you just kind of like grateful for where you are now and enjoying the moment?
I think one thing working for this company and opening the music school both have given me is I've always had kind of an entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
I come up with 3 ideas a week and I'm like, oh my gosh, we should do this. I'm going to create this app. And, I've always kind of had that like visionary thing. Working for them, I really see the potential of growth within either partnering with them, expanding the company with them as on more of a partner level rather than in a kind of management position. My options are, the opportunities that I'm being given are giving me so many options down the road. So cool. I have like a vague plan of where I see this going. But I tell you what, 3 years ago, I was a server for them. And now I'm the GM of that restaurant. So my own restaurant, like that's crazy.
Your own restaurant that just got named best new restaurant in the country. Yeah. So, what happens tomorrow if you get a call from, like, say, someone at Netflix, and they're like, we want to license your book, and we want to make your story into like a mini series, and we want to interject all of the people that have been touched by this and this whole thing, and now you're posed with this because any kind of development type stuff that comes down the pike, it's a big dark. It could happen. It could not happen. Do you take that leap, or are you like, you know what? I've got a good thing going, and that's to like. Have you ever thought about what would happen if something like that out of the blue? Because it could happen.
I will tell you, my boss has been extremely supportive of this idea and this concept, and he's even actually put an offer on a space so I can open it and kind of, I have this idea to extend the idea. And so I've always kind of felt that this project wasn't done, that there's something unfinished with it and it's not done. Not too long ago, I had a guest come in, and at the end of your meal at Tempest, you get a copy of the play Tempest, and that's where your receipt is in the book. And kind of organically, people have started leaving messages. So we have every check presenter on every different page is full of people telling about their experience there or telling a little bit of the story. And it connects with me so much because of the writing and that's kind of my book project. So I had a lady come in and she was talking about how cool this idea was and this concept. And she started telling me about this book that she was reading in her book club. And there are crazy similarities in this book. So after she tells me about this, I go and I get it. It's called The Authenticity Project. And it's very similar to a lot of the things that, like crazy similar. And so I was like, someone stole my idea. I can't even believe this. I reached out to the author and she tweeted me and like pretended she didn't know who I was. And then I'm insane. So on my blog, I have Google Analytics and I'm like, I know that you looked at my blog. I know you ripped me off. Like it was this whole thing. And I went and met with a lawyer and I was like, at the end of the day, what am I going to do? Like, what am I going to do with it? Why am I going to waste time on, she didn't tell the story as good as I could have.
Right.
She did a different version of it. It's not like straight copyright.
Yeah. And it is possible that she had a similar idea.
No, she definitely ripped it.
No, she ripped it.
No, like full ripped it.
Oh, no.
I know. But also, I don't know. I like I said, I was very hot about it and then I wasn't. And so I decided I want to actually write a book and publish kind of my story and tell what I've done with it and then encourage people to do the same. This time a little more edited and structured and
Would
whatever.
you have called it The Authenticity Project?
I think that is so ironic. Isn't it?
Well, that's but that's why I brought that up. When you said the name and it's obviously
that
stolen.
Was the dagger.
To me, anytime I see anything that promotes itself with a name like that, I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Like
you knew exactly what you were doing.
Politically, whenever there's a law or a bill that says something, I'm always like, no, it's the exact opposite.
Right.
Like what was the 9/11 one where it was like the Patriot Act or something like that.
Yes.
And I was like,
no, that's
the Spying on Americans Act. What are you talking about? Why don't you call it what it really is?
Right. It's true.
Yeah. So to call it The Authenticity and then they stole it. To me, it's like right away.
Yeah.
No, that's
it's just, it makes me sad for people that function that way, like
the opportunist.
All she had to do, because I watched interviews of like where the idea came to her and all this stuff, and all she had to do was say, I read this blog and I was really inspired by the story and I wrote about it. Like there's nothing wrong with that, but just give credit where credit's due.
Well, because you encouraged people to write their own version of it.
Right.
So she could have just easily have said that without. Right. And then she could have been authentic, but then she probably wouldn't have called it The Authenticity Project. She would have just called it like, here's my story.
Exactly.
And it would have been authentic.
Exactly. But so I do still have ideas for that idea. If something came up, I would.
Well, I brought that it's what we discussed today. But if something like that presented itself and threw a total stick in your spokes because things are going so well,
right?
And you're like, do I take that opportunity? Are you going to take the red pill? Or are you going to take the blue pill?
To be honest, I feel like I could probably do both because I have learned so much through this job, and I have such leadership above me in Pat and Jamie and Alejandro that if I were presented with an opportunity, I think my best move would be to do it under their umbrella, even if it's something that's not necessarily in their wheelhouse. They're so expert at what they do that it would behoove me to kind of stick with them.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. Yeah. I know that was a tough question, honestly. Like, hey, if something better came along, would you leave? No, that's not what I meant.
What's interesting is I wouldn't look at it as something better coming along for me, especially.
And that's not how I meant the question. No. But my question is like when things are going so well, that's when you get those unexpected like things, Well,
that was like the guest came in, and when that happened, it was like that had been in the background of my mind for a while. And when she said that, it like reignited this fire of like, I actually, about a month ago, I took a trip to up to Asheville, and I never am away from my kids or my husband or my job or any of those things like alone. So I got a cabin in the woods, and I just stayed there and wrote for 4 days straight. And it was luxury. It was like,
hold on a second. You went up to Asheville by yourself.
Yeah.
I have dreamt of doing this same thing. And I don't know, because there's certain things in my life that I'm like, I need to get this straightened out. Mm-hmm. I need time to disconnect and figure it out.
That was my Christmas present from my husband. It was the best present I've ever received in my life.
Oh my goodness.
I should give you the I'll give you the Airbnb information, because it was a perfect Airbnb too. It had like this little outdoor fire pit, and these, it was kind of a log cabin. And
did it have cell phone reception?
Yeah.
Damn. No, I need a place with no cell phone reception.
It wasn't good cell phone reception, but I told my boss I was kind of going, and the people I work with, I told them I was going to unplug, and, I told my husband, like, call me for emergencies. Right. Like, I really want to just take this time. And
my ultimate like dream for that would be a place where it would be impossible
completely
to find
remote.
Me. Yeah. So it would be impossible to find me. And if something went wrong, I'd find out when I'm done.
Yeah.
And, and that seems cold.
I don't think it is at all.
But I have the same view towards sleep. Mm. Like my phone off. You cannot reach me. If someone dies in the middle of the night, sorry.
Yeah.
And that sounds extremely cold, but it's like, I mean,
you get so little of your time.
What am I going to do? Bring them back to life?
Right.
Do I need to know that information in the middle of the night? Right. Now, when you have kids, things change a little. So now they have to have the ability to break through.
Right.
Because, especially my daughter, she's going to be 21 next week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So she could get herself into trouble where she needs someone to come pick her up type of thing.
Right. You have to be allowed.
So now you got to like change your expectations for that. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to like business and stuff like that, there's no emergency that I care about in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
I'm like, I just, if I can't wait till tomorrow, like, I'm not willing to commit. Maybe I need to change myself on that. But
you definitely weren't meant for the food and beverage
industry. No, exactly. Because I'm like, I need that. I crave moments of being disconnected because it's so hard now.
I think that's why I wanted that trip so bad, and that's why it meant so much. Is because I don't.
That's why I stopped in my tracks when you said it. I was like, that's.
Yeah. What's sad though is Asheville. They have such cool coffee shops and bookshops and stuff, and everywhere I went to talk about living in the Charleston bubble. So many places I went to were closed, and they just had signs on the door being like, "We'll open in spring," and it was kind of discouraging because I did also want to have a little bit of like just exploratory stuff because that's what I do, but I couldn't do that, and it was kind of a bummer to see. A city like that, which is such a cool city.
That's so great.
It's such a cool city.
Yeah.
But
it's one of those places I think I could live I could transition over to there pretty easily.
Yeah.
Because you having lived New York, LA, Austin, and now in Charleston, there's something about Charleston. It sucks people in.
Yeah, it really does.
It really is just a wonderful place. And it's like the secret's starting to get out there.
I know.
And I don't know.
I know.
But,
it's just so charming. It's so charming. And it's so, when you find the right side of the community, I feel like there's this kind of more old school and,
the bin here's
saying, well, just the, like, I don't want to say anything, but
right. Well, there's
a part of like the establishment, I guess.
Yeah.
That isn't the most welcoming, and it's always been this way, and this is the way it's be or whatever. But there's also in Charleston the most welcoming and the most going from working in restaurants to LA and New York, and then coming here, and that's why I said maybe I mastered like the front of house kind of service hospitality aspect, because I did it where it was so much harder, and here it's so much easier. When people come out to eat, they want to be pleased. They're not like coming in, some people do, but they're not coming in looking for things to suck or things to pick apart, and I feel like sometimes in bigger cities you might get a little more of that
jaded type of mentality of like, oh yeah, everyone's a critic.
Yes. And here I don't feel that way, and maybe it's because our concept kind of supports a much more genuine experience.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's always interesting to me when a successful restaurant downtown tries to move up to, say, Somerville, and you have such a different clientele. Like, they're not excited about the atmosphere and spending a little extra for that. They're like, oh, different mentality. Yeah. It's a little bit more of that local kind of like, Yeah.
What's so cool too is I worked at Five Church as AGM for a while, and then I went to Tempest. And while it's the same group with the same kind of company values and same approach, I guess, to it, there's still a different. It's a different concept.
Yeah,
but to see the same thing done from like this is what we stand for, this is who we are, and this is how we.
So the core values.
The core values, yes. Are the same, but two different concepts, and the different reception you get from each one of them is really cool to see both sides of it.
Well, that's what I think. I think when I see a restaurant that does well in one area, and I'm like, and they try to open up, because there's so much development up here because there's nowhere else to go downtown.
Right.
So there's all this development up here, and they're trying to recreate, and I'm like, no. But that's the right attitude to have the same, have the same core values. Yeah, and create a place catered to the community that's there now.
Exactly. And that's what we're able to do right now with Nashville. So we're back up and running Five Church Charlotte, and then we have Charleston and Tempest here, and then we'll open Nashville in probably the next couple months. And each city takes on its own identity. So it might be the same. Five Church Charlotte and Five Church Charleston are the same, for everything, but you get a completely different feeling when you walk into each one.
Yeah.
They just redid with a whole new murals on the wall with a bunch of different local artists up in Charlotte. And
so important.
It's amazing. And then down here you have just the church and the ceiling, the entire book, The Art of War, written on the ceiling. I mean, it's a different feeling when you walk in the door of each one.
Yeah.
But still there's this common thread, which is cool.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like it a lot.
Yeah.
And I think
so you're going to come in, right?
Okay. Well, hold on a second. What kind of plant-based options do they have at Tempest? It's never shown up.
We will, chef will curate you, whatever you want.
That's one of the, it's funny. I grew up as the person who never wanted to alter a menu. Like I would go to a restaurant and I would just like, I would ask the waiter.
Are you vegan, vegetarian?
Vegan.
Vegan.
But I would ask the waiter or waitress, like, hey, what's the thing that you're known for? Like I was that guy. I was like, give me the thing you're known for. That's what I want. I want to I want to discover something new or whatever it is. Don't change it. And then when I did transition to a plant-based diet, I had to become the person who's like, can you make it without the cheese or blah, blah, blah. Is there butter in it?
What you don't understand is that's the part for chefs. I mean, they're in there and they refine the menu, right? And they've worked on it so much. And we have we use so much local and sustainable product that we change our menu quite often, but sets will stay the same. But if a vegan comes in and they're like, hey, there's nothing really on the menu that I can eat, it's like their playground back there.
Yeah.
You know, like you give them this inspiration to do something that's a little bit out of the norm of what they normally do, but also come up with something on the fly. And, you know, that's the part of creativity that keeps them from burning out and keeps them from, keeps them motivated.
I truly have never had a problem with it.
Yeah.
But I also have this immense guilt.
Oh.
So when I go in there and I'm like, I'm like, oh, I don't want to go in this place when it's a Friday night at 6:30 and ask them to like, you know, when they're like really just busting their butts just to get food out the damn, kitchen. Yeah. And I'm sitting there going like, can you make up something on the spot with whatever ingredients you have that is not reserved for the other meals that you have to make for other people?
That's our job.
Yeah,
like that's our job is to have you come in and blow you away so much that you take into account. I made them think this up on the spot and I, did whatever. And they came out and they still made something exceptional. And you'll remember that. You'll remember
every
that
time
experience.
I go to a place that does that, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful thing. But there's a lot of times when choosing and I'm sorry, I didn't even want to bring this part up, but there are times when I'm looking for a place. No. If they have a stock vegan or plant-based item on the menu, then we're going there.
It's an automatic.
Because especially when I'm in an area that I'm not used to, like a new place, a new city or something like that, I will pull up Yelp and I'll look for vegan options. Friendly. And that's how we choose the restaurant because my wife's not. My wife will eat whatever.
Right.
And so it's always on the compromise. And Ellen, I said many times like, hey, let's just go someplace and if everyone's got a salad.
Right.
I can figure out something.
Yeah.
So it's I try to take the pressure off of but it always comes down to that. And I feel like this immense guilt.
You're going to come dine with us guilt-free. Chef Will is going to put you together something special.
I'm excited.
Also, just a little hint, just always put it in your reservation.
Yeah.
You have this little bit of a guilt and you're like, oh,
yeah.
Just put in the reservation.
And I'm an easy plant-based person.
I've never met a plant-based person that's not. I'm not
because I'm just like whatever you want to make.
Yes.
I don't care.
As
agree. Long as it's.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
So that's awesome.
Yeah. It was so fun being here. I thought I was a little intimidated because they said it might be an hour long, and I was like, "What am I going to say for an hour?" But this has been very conversational.
We're well over an hour at this point.
Are we? Jesus.
Yeah, no, but that's great. It's become a thing for me to experience because I do a lot of portraiture in my photography, and this has become like a similar type of thing. Of a really kind of like digging into somebody and figuring out what they're all about. And it's and doing this with somebody like you who I've never met before. And you have no idea who I am.
Right.
And so we get to have this little, but that hopefully will help other people who are in so many different facets. Anybody who's in a creative industry most likely has food and beverage as we've discussed, musicians who've toured, people who write, journal. Like there's so many different things in there for somebody to pick out of what you've done with your life to this point and to think like you're still quite young. There's so many more chapters to be written.
It's true.
And it's going to be an exciting ride.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Best way for people to find you?
TempestCharleston.com.
Okay.
You can email me, Madison@TempestCharleston.com. I kind of love getting personal emails of people that, hey, can I get a reservation? I love that. So do that or call the restaurant anytime. We have an amazing brunch. Yeah, our brunch is really good. Pancakes to die for. But yeah.
People, if you're coming to Charleston and safely coming to Charleston, hopefully soon, hopefully by the time the summer comes along, people will feel a lot more comfortable with kind of getting back to normal.
Yeah.
I think we all are wanting it more than anything right now is to be able to go see a band and go eat inside of a restaurant and just hang out with friends and have a drink and not feel guilty or not feel anxiety. But yeah, you guys are doing it.
Come stop by.
Come stop by. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Before you get going, don't forget to subscribe to the show if you haven't already. And also, you can check out more at jwnpod.com or follow me on Instagram at Joe Latex. That's at JOEL, the number 8X. Have a great day. Peace.